Hi, this is Brett. I'm sitting here near Patterson Street with an interesting view, and it's a real nice day. Feels like it's about 69, 75 degrees, right in that range. There's a real light breeze that'll make a flag wiggle but not wave, kind of dance. There's a few flags next to these stones that they're dancing around right now. And looks like there's a certain level of respect here. Not seeing a lot of things toppled. I'm going to talk on the subject of runoff from the well. And back in, I think it was 2003, after we'd purchased our house, first house, a real fixer-upper, not as bad as the one in my video called Fixer-Upper, certainly not that bad, but it really was, in a whole variety of ways, it was in need of tender, loving, hard work and expense in order to get it up to a place where you could live in the 21st century in it. And these things have involved roofing and, getting rid of the old iron pipes, that were all blistery and leaky. Getting the electricity in the house grounded so nobody got killed when they plugged in their guitar amplifier or something. And, a host of other things, fixing eaves and gutters and all that, and cutting down a mess of big, bothersome trees that basically kept the roof shady and covered with leaves most of the time, which, as most of us know, doesn't work. That's when your insurance company says, no, that's your problem. And all that, So anyways, we bought the house, and I'm still working on it. A lot less. I'm old. Everything I do makes me hurt anymore. I got such a day-long stretching regimen, you'd think I was, freaking on that Kung Fu TV show. Just, my wife says she can hear my neck pop from 5 feet away. But anyways, the well, yeah. So after about 2 summers, I guess it was, give or take, late spring, summers, and falls, I had realized that this property was just a trove of art supplies. It's been my motto for many years. Is it a motto or an ethos? The Lord will provide art supplies. I believe that right now. I believe that I could walk a circle of 50 yards around me, just about anywhere, and gather up enough stuff to make a pretty cool assemblage that would stick to a certain theme. I might even run across somebody throwing out a stretched print, big old painting looking print made in China that they paid $100 for, just sitting by the road. I'll take it home, paint over it with white paint, and bam, free canvas. But anyways, the Lord will provide art supplies. So one of the very first times I was mowing my back property, and what I want to say is that it's about 20 steps from the porch to the sidewalk out front, but it's about 200 steps to get to the back of the property. I got about a half acre back there, and so I fenced it all in. My son and I fenced it all in, and put posts in and put some good tall with a good shelf life kind of wire fence up, and you know, wrapped it up so we could give our dogs over the years. It's been about 5 of them, place to run around and have a good time. But anyways, I decided, because I showed up, I got a job first at a print shop running their computer room. They did that, and back then they were doing it on these giant 2-inch thick tapes on spools that were super noisy. I'd have to degauss them and stuff like that. It was just a bunch of fun. I got hired by a guy that used to be in the Navy like I was. He was a submarine guy, and he hired me pretty much on the basis of being a veteran. And I worked for him until I started teaching, maybe 6 months later. I really appreciate that. Shout out to Jeff Lawson. And then I started teaching, and right away people would walk into my classroom and say, "Is this the art room?" I'm like, "No, this is an English room." "Oh, looks like an art room." I'm like, "Well, you know, I for the ones that best express what they know by drawing something, I give them ways to let me know that they know it." And sometimes they look cool, and so we put them up. And then people, you know, and then I got a small little art show at the public library, and after that, all of a sudden, you know, people love novelty. And so here's this guy that moved in from out of state. He does art, he's weird, and he plays guitar and writes songs and stuff, and he's married to this woman, and you know, they got the stepkids with the new baby thing going on, and it's all just a bunch of fascinating stuff to gossip about. And that's a paradigm I've watched repeat about 25,000 times. 1,000 times a year since I moved here. But anyways, yeah, so you know, so artsy people, we were meeting artsy people. And I thought, well, you know what, let's do a little one-day Saturday outdoor art show here on our property in the backyard. You know, like zone it out, tell people you got to bring your own table, and you know how much room you need. And we had a really cool gathering of a number of artists that day. And I won't. The only one I'm going to name is Yvonne Easton, and who was a dear friend of ours. My wife was the first person she called when she had the stroke that killed her. Lovely gal, and some other people, local artists. And oh yeah, and there's this one guy they call Fish from Ridgeway, Virginia, who's a welder, but he uses his welding equipment to make these crazy sculptures. He's got a dinosaur in his front yard, and he came down with his motorcycle. He's got this amazing Harley, and it has, I can't even describe it except to say it's otherworldly, with all kinds of biker iconography all over it, you know, skulls and stuff that he's welded about anywhere you could weld something. It's beautiful. Really is. Makes you worry about going to hell, really, to look at the thing like, oh, Lord have mercy, is that what the demons ride over your head with? And anyways, he had that bike there too. Oh, the children that came loved it. They just flocked over to that thing, you know. And looking at the art and stuff. We ended up having a sudden rainstorm land on us that day, so we must have been doing something right. That the powers of the air come down against us quickly, but fortunately we actually had tarps and plastic and stuff just in case it happened. And I don't know how many people might have got a little water on something of theirs. I hope it didn't do any damage, but otherwise it was a pretty good day. And I don't know, maybe about 6 months before that show, which was called Fear Not, with an exclamation point, I made a sign and put it right over the arch that goes toward the backyard where the steps go down that said The Well. And I called it The Well because every time I dipped into that yard, I was able to pull out art supplies. I remember mowing the backyard. One of the first times I was mowing the backyard, the blade hit something. I'm like, oh Lord, hard enough to make the engine stop. I pull it back, and there's a piece of pipe sticking out of the ground. I'm like, oh man. And I get pulling on it, because sometimes, you just pull it right out. I get pulling on it, and it's coming up laterally, like in a line. So this is like the elbow. I've got my hands on this little 2-inch elbow on the end of that's screwed onto a longer straight pipe, and then I'm watching the ground come up as I pull it, and I pull it, and I pull it, and pull it, and out comes about a 12-foot long pipe with an elbow on the end of it. And I'm thinking, what in the world? And as I'm wondering why, I guess I could imagine somebody dropping a pipe in their backyard. But anyways, but I noticed that when I pulled that one up, way down at the other end, there was a spot where it kind of hung up a little bit and then came out. And I looked, and there was another piece of pipe that had a little bit been unearthed when I pulled the first one up. And I'm like, what in the world? And so I stopped cutting grass that day. I just started walking around looking for pipes that the lawnmower might hit and finding them. And honest to God, I found well over a ton of pipes, conduit, even, I think, scaffolding, lengths of parts of scaffolding, and all kinds of metal, all up under the ground, out in the backyard. And I got them out of there as best I could and leveled it back off and stuff. And then a lot of them don't exist anymore, but I use those materials to make sculptures that had some element of balance or balancing in them. Like you think about Libra, the constellation, where I would, use the joints and welds and bends and so forth in the pieces of metal that I found to make things that would stand upright, often starting with a tripod of some sort that might be 15 feet tall, and then find ways to attach other things to it without using any kind of welding or wire to make that happen. And when I could get something to a place where I thought I liked the way it was looking, then I'd come in with the wire. When it was able to stand by itself without anything falling off, and some of them were really big, I'd go in and kind of hardwire with wire at the various places where pipes intersected. And a lot of these things stood for 15 years. There's about 2 of them that are still up. Everything's finite down here, ain't it? But I decided I was going to call that place the Well. And it still is, it's amazing. In so many ways, this property has provided us with good stuff, not memories. The perfect tree to hang a tire swing from. A very good place to build an outdoor enclosure for a pet. A very large space for children to run around safely and have a lot of room to have a good time, where there's very little danger, where there's nothing that's sharp that you might fall on that, wasn't growing there. The street that we live on, I was driving down it a long time ago, 26, 25 something years ago, and somebody was throwing out a long yellow fiberglass slide. They sell these at, the big, Lowe's and Home Depot, where you can buy things to make swing sets, and they're expensive, right? And there it was, just laying out there with a pile of other stuff for the big clamp truck to grab and take to the landfill. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I grabbed that and threw it in the back of my truck and brought it home and took it out there and attached it to the same tree that the rope swings on, the tire swing. And it's still there to this day. Our kids could use it. Our grandboys were able to use it. The Well, every time I dip in there, sometimes when I'm bored, I'll just go out there and walk around, and it'll provide me with something to do, because a big limb's come down, One of them big limbs that's got too much English ivy or Virginia creeper on it, it just weighs the tree down to the place where the old branch just comes right off. And sometimes I find a place where I have to fix the fence up. Sometimes it's connected to a branch coming down. And sometimes I chance upon something that I have not seen in years and years and years. You know, like the remnant of a sculpture that has just decomposed. You know, it was made out of wood or something organic, and it just kind of give out like we do. And I'm not real precious about the stuff I make. People are like, dude, you use a stapler to put your paintings on the wall? I'm like, yeah. You're gonna lose your mind about a couple of little tiny pinpricks in a canvas? Why? That's not what you're supposed to be looking at, stupid. But anyways, I'll find a remnant of something. I was out there yesterday chucking branches, you know, over into the branch zone. A lot of bamboos come down. And I look down, I'm like, well, I'll be damned. And right there I see a black leather shoe. And I realized that it's a band shoe from when my youngest girl was in band playing horns. And there was a year that the county gave them a big hunk of money to replace the marching band uniforms, which were really, really long past their shelf life, and had certainly not been dried cleaned often enough. Okay, I'm going to leave it right there. Okay, think about marching bands in the hot summer sun. And anyways, the county, 1 year, this happened 1 year. It was an arts win for high school bands. Gave the high school a big chunk of money to replace their uniforms, and the director of the band was like, hey, any of you guys want some of this stuff? Because I suppose, and I don't blame him, he didn't want to have to carry it to the dumpster himself. You know, my God, this band, at one point, I think we had 80 kids in it. When we were on the band boosters back then, it was right big. It was really something. At any rate, my daughter, having been raised by a daddy who was always saying, the Lord will provide art supplies, said, I'll take some of that. She might have been thinking about me. Actually, I'm pretty sure she was thinking about me, because there's much of it that she still has. Let me put it that way. But my daughter came home with a whole mess of band uniforms and them funny hats with the pointy feather thing sticking out the top, and all kinds of this cheap sort of military looking, little eagles with flags and stuff like that would attach to the fronts of the hats, and, little fake brass things and so forth. I cut my finger on a couple of them when I was going through them. You know, the well is a place that just where art supplies show up, and it's pretty cool. We actually were able to give those band uniforms to a local theater group, that does plays and stuff. I can imagine there's plenty of contexts where something like that might kind of come in handy. You know, like if you were doing a version of the Nutcracker around Christmas time, you could probably whip out a couple of them uniforms. Or if you were doing the Wizard of Oz, you could have the guy at the gate wearing one of them or something like that. So anyways, yeah, so we were able to take a thing that came to us at no cost and pass it right along to somebody who could use it 8 years later. And all it cost us was having a place to put it until that happened. I think that's the best use of storage. I think a lot of folks pay for a storage space in order to, it's kind of like that thing in the Bible where it talks about, I got to build another barn for all my stuff. How'd that work out for you, boy? I don't mind storing stuff if it's got a place to go, but at some point, me and Tina have been downsizing for years. We just give stuff away, I don't even have a recording studio anymore. I gave it to one of my girls. Why? Well, because she was wanting to record music and actually trying to do it and didn't have the tools. And so I'm like, well, it just seems natural that I'd pass my my recording equipment along to one of my own kids who's carrying that forward. See, now that's not generational sin. That's generational creativity. I like that. You know, we were created by a creator who's creative, and if we're made in his image, I guess we're supposed to be creative too, you know, in some way. Art, cooking, building things, whatever. You know, leave something behind that is better than what was there before you got there. So anyways, runoff from the well. The runoff from the well is what happens when we reach in and yank out a bucket full of art supplies and turn them into things, or set them aside for the future use that'll be revealed about them. You know, it's still going on. I was just out there today and I realized that the yard back there actually looks bigger and brighter kind of right now this year for some reason. And it occurs to me that it's because the tree trunks are getting taller and the shady stuff is in a different spot, what casts shade, that like I was able to do when we first bought the place, I can once again drive in from the back with my truck and get within 20 feet of the house. Because the trees are big enough that I can get up under them again, which is kind of nice. I mean, Lord, we have a pine tree out there that one of our granddaughters, well, we only got one granddaughter. We got a great granddaughter. Our granddaughter brought home this from I think it was Vacation Bible School. She came home with a Dixie cup with a little tiny pine tree seedling growing up in it that was about 4 inches tall. A really long time ago, 20-some years ago. She came and she says, you want to plant this out there in the back? Can we plant this out there in the back? I said, come on now. And we went out back next to where the trampoline used to be and stuck it in the ground. You know, it had a kind of it was in a sort of an enclosure that I would never mow in there, so it was safe. By God, that thing's taller than this weird obelisk that I'm standing next to right now. I reckon that tree is probably about 25 feet tall now. So some things get bigger, like the Bible. It gets bigger every time you open it. And some things aren't supposed to get bigger, and we're supposed to give them away. And so anyways, whatever your well is, I hope you're scooping good stuff out of it and sending that good stuff where you know it ought to go.